Hi, my name's Father Mike Schmitz, and this is Ascension Presents. So there is this, how would I say that? There's always new waves of exercising that kind of like sweep the nation. There's Zumba, there's Pilates, there's whatever. There's this thing called CrossFit. I'm sure you've heard of it. Because here's the thing. If you've ever seen the movie Fight Club, I'm not endorsing the movie Fight Club, but it was a thing back in the 90s. Anyways, the number one rule of Fight Club was you don't talk about Fight Club. If CrossFit had a rule, it would be the number one rule of CrossFit is you always talk about CrossFit. So basically anyone who does CrossFit, you probably heard of it because they can't stop talking about it. Okay, so what is CrossFit? Well, there's kind of three elements to it, I think, traditionally. It's constantly varied movement for functional fitness performed at high intensity. So that's kind of the idea. There's constantly varied functional movement performed at high intensity. And so you've seen these boxes or gyms that pop up all over the place because it's this thing that's really kind of just taken off. One of the things I've noticed in doing this, though, is there's a bunch of correlations or connections or possible connections between CrossFit and the church. And here's what I mean. Here's what I think CrossFit does really, really well that we as the church can learn from. Because again, these boxes are everywhere. And people who show up and they're willing to do a lot of things at high intensity, constantly varied functional movement at high intensity on a regular daily basis, sometimes more than one in a day. And you think like, wow, these are ordinary people from ordinary people who have never been inside a gym, have never worked out, to like your high school and college athletes, to like your professional athletes who do CrossFit, and everyone in between. So what is this kind of a thing that can reach this wide range of people that the church can learn from, because that's what we want too. We want everybody to come to know Christ. We want everybody to be a part of the church. We want everybody, from someone who's never been inside a church to those who are raised in the church, to be able to come, right? So here's the 5 things I think I've learned. I think that we can learn as a church from CrossFit. Number one thing is that every gym I've been to, everyone is known, and if they're not there, they're missed. I remember the first day I ever went to a CrossFit gym, this guy walked in, and the coach said, there's always a coach. He's like, hey, Alec, haven't seen you for a while. And it was one of those things, immediately I realized, oh, wow, they notice if you're not here. They notice if you're gone. If I'm ever gonna be out of town for like a couple of days or even a couple of weeks, I'm always like, okay, guys, I'm gonna be gone, but like, I'm coming back and I'm gonna be working out while I'm not here. There's that sense of you're known, you're seen, you're known, and you're missed when you're not there. One of the, I think it was one of the 4 reasons why people have identified as they left the church is because they stopped coming to Mass and it seemed like no one noticed. Like no one asked them. No one said, hey, what's going on in your life? Come on back. Number 2 is, again, it's constantly varied. It's functional fitness, which means it's meant to like be used. So the idea of like you're doing deadlifts. Why? Because at some point you're gonna lift up your grandchildren or you're gonna lift up your child. It's not the idea of like I'm gonna merely go for a run for 5 miles, because that's nice and everything, but that's not necessarily functional. You don't necessarily need that skill other than just the ability to move, the ability to run at any point. That's wonderful. But functional fitness is meant to be like, it is not just the 1 hour of the day. This will now help you for the rest of your day. This will help you bring in your groceries. This will help you do what you need to do if you need to use your body. So the idea behind CrossFit is it's functional, it's useful. And I think sometimes we miss the boat in church because it's like this disconnect between, okay, here's what I'm doing when I'm in church, and here's what I do when I'm in my own real life. And if we could, as church, begin bridging the gap between, okay, so what we did in Mass on Sunday, what we do in our prayers on a daily basis, here's how they impact how we live on a daily basis. That would be, well, that's what it's supposed to be, obviously, right? But a lot of times we can divorce our lives between our church life and our real life. But if our coaches, our priests, our teachers, our other, lay leaders, if they can help us bridge that gap between here's what we do in Mass, here's what we do when we're praying in prayer, and here's what we do in our real lives, in our daily lives, that'd be like, oh, this is functional spiritual life. This is why, this is how I can, being in prayer with the Lord is helping me actually live a wise life. Receiving His mercy actually will help me give mercy to the people in my life who need mercy, right? So it's like functional spiritual life. So functional fitness, functional spiritual life. Number 3 is that if you go to a CrossFit gym and you're like, I've never done much. They're like, well, here's the workout of the day. We can always scale it. Like, meaning you can always like say, okay, here's what is the prescribed workout. But if you can't do that movement, or if you can't do it in as much of those movements, or whatever the thing is, if you're limited in any way, or just beginning, or whatever the thing is, they're like, oh, no problem, we'll just scale it. And there's something about it that's like super freeing, because it's not like, oh, if you can't do the thing, then you probably shouldn't be here. It becomes more personalized, right? So the idea behind it is in the church, okay, someone could say, okay, so, praying a rosary a day is really good, or having a holy hour is a really, really solid spiritual practice. That might be the prescribed workout of the day. But you're like, I'm not able to do this. Well, like, okay, what can you do? To begin there, and to actually, that's what we say as church, but I don't think we communicate that as church to the people, to be able to say, actually, here is what some people are doing. If you don't think you're at that point, here's what you can do. And just make it as easy as possible to do what you can do. And that's the thing, the church needs to continually say this, because I think all of us need to be continually reminded of it, is just because you can't do what someone else can do, that doesn't mean that you can't do what you can do. Number 4 is it's challenging. And I love this about like every single CrossFit workout is challenging. And people show up to be challenged. That's the thing, is even though we're gonna scale this, like I'm showing up, and I'm actually gonna push myself to a point where this is going to be difficult. I'm not gonna hurt myself, but I'm ready to be challenged. And this is where it's not just the church, but it's people showing up. The idea of saying, what we're doing here is really important. Like this whole spiritual life, this whole pursuing Jesus Christ, but being a disciple of Christ, he says, you're my disciple if you pick up your cross daily, deny yourself and follow me. That be ready for a challenge. And it would be so incredible if, as like church leaders and as the people of God, to say, let's all be ready to be challenged. And let's show up like every Sunday. We show up like, okay, I'm ready. What do I need to do next? As opposed to like, okay. Like, make it as easy for me as possible. If we as a church had that whole attitude of where can I serve? Who out there needs me to be more generous? Who out there needs me to be more patient? Who out there needs me to challenge myself and to give more of myself? It would be awesome. And number 5 is this. As I said, every gym has a coach or has coaches. So when you show up to train, there's always a coach, and that coach takes the lead and says, okay, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna lead you, I'm gonna coach you through this stuff. But all these people show up and they're ready to be led, they're ready to be coached. But if we had, the priests, if we had the religious sisters, if we had the people who are teaching us, who are ready to lead and ready to coach, that would be phenomenal. But also to have people showing up who are ready to be led and ready to be coached would be, it would be a complete game changer. Imagine being surrounded at Mass by a bunch of people who are like, yeah, we're here because at whatever level we're at, we're ready to be challenged. And just Father, or whoever it is teaching us, our DRE or the lay minister who's like, shaping and forming and helping out, where do I go next? Like, how do I take the next steps? So these 5 things are things I think that the church we can learn from CrossFit. One is that when everyone shows up, they are seen, they're known, and they're missed when they're not there. Number 2, we have a functional spirituality that's not meant to be separated or divorced from the rest of our lives. Number 3, that even though things are challenging, they can be scaled. Number 4, that they're still challenging. And number 5, that we have people who are willing to be led, willing to be taught, and also we have leaders who are willing to lead and willing to teach. I think that's something we can learn, and maybe not, I don't know, maybe you disagree, maybe you think that this is overblown, maybe you think I'm making too much of a stretchy analogy. I don't know, it's an analogy, so here we go. Anyways, from all of us here at Ascension Presents, my name is an overcaffeinated Father Mike, and God bless.